And for more on this, we now talk to Judges Matter researcher and advocacy officer Mbekezeli Benjamin, and he joins us via our video link. Mbekezeli, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure talking to you here on the late edition. Of course, just looking at that, where we have another judge who has been suspended and who will be facing a tribunal. What do you make of this latest development? I mean, this is not the first time, even this year, we are hearing a judge hauled before a disciplinary.
Good evening, Bali, and good evening to the viewers. Well, I think it's a positive thing that we're seeing judges being held accountable for their duties and acting according to the high standards of the judiciary. You're right, this is actually the third tribunal that is currently running against a judge. You'll recall even last week there were two other judges who were impeached and removed from office. So it seems as if accountability is now the name of the game. And that for us is an important thing. It is not something that we should be worried about. It's not something that is necessarily negative, but it is a reassurance that judges who hold enormous power in our society will also be held accountable. So that for us is important.
And you allude to the fact that we saw the other two judges being impeached. At the same time, we know that Judge Maumela is also before a disciplinary process. And looking at, it seems as if there's become a more tough stance when it comes to the conduct of judges and continued criticism thereof. And what do you think that is so? Do you think that this is good for democracy?
I think it is absolutely good, Mbali. For the longest time, there has been criticism against the Judicial Service Commission for how slow it is to act against judges. We ourselves have been one of the strongest critics against the JSC, and it is really commendable that we're seeing action being taken against judges. And we must also remember that the allegations against Judge Maumela and Judge Mbekezeli, who was also suspended at the same time, relate to their core function as judges. The reason why they are judges of the High Court is that they are able to resolve disputes as quickly as possible. They are supposed to hand down judgments as quickly as possible after the hearing. And the allegations against them is that they are just taking too long and essentially denying justice to all the people who have been waiting on those judgments. So for us, it is a positive thing that the JSC is finally taking action against them. And hopefully we never see many more of these cases, because at the same time, in as much as we say it is positive, it is also quite embarrassing that people who we hold in such high regard are actually now being hauled over the coals for what should be the basic function of their jobs.
And what does this say? I mean, you are talking about judges of a high court and looking at the judges facing some sort of misconduct or disciplinary and, taking it back to the fact that what does this say about accountability, especially for people very high up in our society?
Yes, I think this is an important moment for accountability. The Constitution gives judges a lot of power, like I said. In terms of Section 165 of the Constitution, judges have the power to set aside the decisions of a democratically elected parliament. They have the power to set aside the decisions of a democratically elected president. And so you need people of that enormous power to also be held to the highest possible standards. They have a saying that the higher you go, the harder it is for you and the harder scrutiny that you're subjected to. And that should be the case throughout. But at the same time, though, it shouldn't end only with individuals. We as Judges Matter want the Judicial Conduct Tribunal to also probe the systemic issues that have led to this kind of situation. Judge Maumela and Judge Mbekezeli are not the only judges who delay in giving down judgments. Part of the reason why is because judges are not capacitated enough in order to do their jobs. We know that we just have a shortage of judges across the country. There's also problems relating to administrative and research support that they should be getting. So there are those problems that we hope will also come out in the tribunal process. But we do still want them as individuals to be held accountable at the end of the day.
And what do you make of the thought and the conversations which are also taking place that it seems as if it's more black judges who are being hauled before these disciplinary processes that we have recently seen in recent years? And one would ask, 30 years into democracy, what does that say about, when it comes to transformation and regressing on transformation?
Well, look, in the 30 years of democracy, we've made a tremendous amount of progress when it comes to transformation in our judiciary. About 40% of our judges are women, about 75% are black. And when you think back in 1994, there were only 2 women judges of about 150, and the vast majority of our judges were white men. So we should really keep that in mind. And I'm not sure where the criticism comes from that says it's only black judges that is action taken against them. As far as I can recall, there was Judge Prela of the Gauteng High Court who was disciplined in a Judicial Conduct Tribunal. There's Judge Van Zyl, who was previously found guilty by a Judicial Conduct Tribunal. And there is, in fact, another complaint laid against him by the Judge President of the KwaZulu-Natal High Court. So there is action taken against judges of different races. It's not just black judges. And we should always maintain that whatever color you are, as a judge, you will be held accountable. That is the message that we must keep on reinforcing. And I would also encourage anyone who's seen a judge of a different race acting less than the standards expected of them to lay a complaint with the Judicial Service Commission. And the Judicial Service Commission must be able to follow through in that complaint. So that is the only assurance that I can give. But as far as I know, everyone is an equal opportunity offender, and the JSC has held everyone accountable.
And going back to Judge Maumela and looking at how judges are monitored, maybe also take us through that. What are the processes followed when it comes to monitoring judges for the work that they conduct?
So there are 2 key pieces of legislation that provide the standards at which the judges should operate. The first one is the norms and standards for the performance of judicial functions. The norms and standards set out the time that the courts must sit. It sets out the timelines at which cases should go through the court system, and also the timelines from which judges must be able to deliver a hearing, so a judgment. So, for example, in a criminal case, a judge must be able to deliver a judgment within 6 months of the plea or the case being finalized. And in a civil case, the judge must be able to deliver a judgment within 3 months of the hearing. Depending on the complexity of the case, there will be a little bit of time given to them, but the standard is that you should be able to do your job within 3 months. And then the other piece of regulation for judges is the Code of Conduct. And the Code of Conduct sets out key ethical standards that judges must adhere to inside and outside of the court. So even in your private capacity, the Code of Conduct applies. So even when you're hanging out with friends over the weekend, you must, as a judge, act honorably all the time. You can't associate with certain individuals, so you can't be seen with business people, you can't be seen with politicians or any other person who people may believe that you have an influence over you. So it is quite a strict standard, and judges must be held accountable to that. And of course, there are other unwritten rules in the judiciary and that have developed over the years, and those also apply to how judges should behave themselves.
And very briefly, if he is found guilty, what then would be followed after that? Briefly.
Okay, so just quickly, this is the Judicial Conduct Tribunal to probe gross judicial misconduct. So if he is found guilty and the JSC upholds that guilty finding, then we will see another sitting in Parliament which will consider his impeachment and removal from office. So this is the most serious level of misconduct, and the punishment is removal from office through impeachment.
Mbekezeli, thank you so much for your time this evening. Always a pleasure talking to you. That is Mbekezeli Benjamin from Judges Matter. He is a research and advocacy officer.